There's an update on Josh Simmons headed into the Chiefs' third preseason game.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
You are Locked On Chiefs, your daily Kansas City Chiefs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to another episode of Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. Let's just dive right in. Who is going to be making this team? And there is going to be a lot that we're going to figure out in preseason game number 3 against the Seattle Seahawks. That is going to be kicking off shortly. And we have some battles to watch as we head into preseason game number 3. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But we did get a Josh Simmons update. And this one came out on Thursday, and it's basically he's getting ready to get a second opinion on his back. When it comes to offensive linemen and backs, I don't think that there's really a good scenario where if you have a back injury, you feel great about it, because that is not something that you can deal with and get healed easy. He is considered day-to-day with the Chiefs, according to what they have said. We will see whether or not that changes. But he is getting a second opinion, which means that he has concerns about how it's going to play out this season for him, whether or not he should be able, or whether he should be playing or not. From every indication that we've gotten from the Chiefs, they expect that if this was a game week, he would be playing. Is that going to end up being the case when we get the second opinion? We'll find out. What does it mean? Go look at what he did to his body this offseason. He completely changed the way he looks and lost a lot of weight and put on some really good weight. And he was looking fantastic in camp. So this would be a huge, huge loss for Kansas City if it ends up being anything more than what the Chiefs already think it is. My bigger concern when it comes to this whole Josh Simmons thing is you head into the regular season now because none of the offensive starters are likely to play in this game against the Seattle Seahawks. So you're now headed into the season with maybe without Josh Simmons. We won't know until the report comes out. He's only played a few snaps in the preseason. Kingsley Suamati has played every snap. Creed Humphrey's played every snap. We expect both of those guys to be fine and good going forward. But then you have Trey Smith, who is coming back from a injury as well to his hip, and it looks like he is probably not going to practice, or probably not going to play any in this game, in preseason game number 3. And I guess it's Jalen Moore as your starting right tackle, who hasn't got any real good snaps at right tackle. He played the first preseason game at right tackle, but only played 2 series instead of getting all the snaps during the preseason and all the snaps at training camp and all the snaps in preseason game 1 and 2 at that position. He just got really 1, and then he went and played left tackle. I don't think he's playing in this game. So you're going to be going into the season with 2 guys out of your entire starting 5 that have played together for any length of time when it comes to snaps. That is not a good scenario for week 1 against the Denver Broncos, when you could also be without Josh Simmons. As we talked about on yesterday's show, Kansas City also made a trade going out and getting Josh Ezeudu from the Giants, who has played left tackle and left guard mostly in his career. He's been injured. He was a 3rd-round pick, I believe, in 2022. They traded a 7th-round pick in 2028 to acquire him. I do not know whether or not he will actually play in this game, considering he just literally got to the team. But they made a trade for him, and that to me means that they expect that he is going to be a guy that can step in and be on this roster at some point. So whether or not he actually plays for the Chiefs in preseason game number 3 is yet to be seen. But the one guy that we do know is going to play, and he's going to probably play a lot, would be Kahlil Benson, and he is going to start at left tackle for the Chiefs going into this game. What does that mean for him? He has played right guard. He started preseason game number 1 at right guard because Trey Smith was out. He started preseason game number 2 at right tackle and really had a mixed bag. There were some good snaps. I don't want to say that they were all bad, but then most of the snaps that you saw, especially the pass blocking snaps, he was laid off the ball, and you can't have that at tackle. And now he's flipping over to the other side and playing left tackle. So they're going to see if a guy that was laid off the ball in preseason game number 2 is going to be able to do something and give them good enough left tackle snaps to protect Garrett Nussmeier, who's going to be starting in this game as well. I don't feel great about that matchup. I don't feel great about the fact that you have Benson playing left tackle for you. when Pole has been your guy that has been at left tackle this entire preseason and at left tackle too. I would think that would make more sense than putting Benson in that scenario and getting him out there just to see if he can do it, because that's basically what this is at that point. There are a lot of questions when it comes to the offensive line beyond the starting group. Obviously, with Josh Ezeudu coming in, if he's going to be on this roster, so he is a guy that maybe doesn't even play on Friday night, but is going to be on this roster because they just made a trade for him. So I can't imagine there's any chance he's not. That gives you 6, because I would expect that your starting line right now is Josh Simmons, Kingsley Suamataia, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith and Jalen Moore. Kahlil Benson, I would say, has made this team is number 6. Josh Ezeudu would be 7. They're going to probably keep 9, and I would say Hunter Norzad's 8, who I would imagine is going to be starting at right guard in this game. Or is he going to be playing center? That's going to be a question, is to see. I would think that, now I think about it, I think he probably will play center, just for the simple fact that they need to get him snaps, especially if he's going to be the guy that they're going to be keeping on this roster if they only keep 9. Because I think that the odd man out this year is going to be Mike Caliendo with this move, because to me, I just don't see how you go into a season and have Esapole not make this roster for the second year in a row after you went out and you traded for him and he came back and he gave you snaps last season. I just don't see a scenario where Pole isn't one of the tackles on this roster. And at that point, I cannot see them keeping 10. So I think Caliendo is on his way out, but where does he play in this game? Who is your starting right tackle in this game? I would guess, based on what we've seen, it's probably Esapole, or is it going to be Driscoll? I don't know what they're going to do. Pole's been playing predominantly left tackle this entire preseason. So are they going to put him in a position where they flip him over and they have him play right tackle? We will see. But going into this game, they have a lot of questions that have to be answered at the offensive line position. They have to figure out who's going to make this roster, who is going to give them the best opportunity to protect Patrick Mahomes if something happens to one of the starters, which we've already had 2 of them go down in training camp with some sort of injuries. Again, not sure how this is going to play out. Not sure who the starting offensive line is going to be. I would guess, based on what we've seen in the past, it will be a combination of guys like Kahlil Benson will be your left tackle. I would think Norzad's probably going to be your center. Caliendo is going to be a guard of some sort, and then it's going to be Driscoll and Pole switching or potentially being right tackle. Not sure who the other guard is. Is it going to be Nigra? Is it going to be CJ? Well, CJ Hansen's not playing in this game, so lots of different things on the offensive line to work out. And the other question when it comes to all of that is how long do these guys play? Because all the starters are going to be sitting, so you're going to be going in the first quarter. How long do they let them go? We know Nussmeier is going to be basically playing the entire game because Mahomes and Fields aren't playing in this game, and Oladokin's out with an injury. So the thought is Nussmeier is going to play the entire preseason game preseason game number 3. We will see if that ends up being the case. When we get back, we're going to get into battles to watch. That's coming up right after this. Life gets busy, and figuring out what is for dinner every night can quickly become another thing on the to-do list. Home Chef takes the stress out of mealtime by delivering fresh ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes right to your door. Whether you're looking to eat healthier, save money on takeout, or simply spend less time grocery shopping and meal planning, Home Chef makes cooking at home simple, convenient, and enjoyable. Home Chef offers more than 30 meal options every week, including calorie-conscious and GLP-1 friendly meals, so there's something for every schedule and lifestyle. And people really love it. Home Chef is rated number 1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. For me, it's just the convenience of not having to constantly figure out what's for dinner. It takes the daily decision off my plate, literally. I also like that it helps me stay on track while eating at home or instead of defaulting to takeout. It's become part of my routine in a way that just makes the week feel a little more organized and a lot less stressful. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off and free shipping for your first box plus free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/lockedonnfl. That's homechef.com/lockedonnfl for 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. Homechef.com/lockedonnfl. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. There are certain flavors that instantly feel like summer, and for a lot of people, those classic red, white, and blue freezer pops are right at the top of the list. Sweet cherry, lime, blue raspberry. It's one of those nostalgic summer flavors everybody recognizes. Now, 5-Hour Energy is bringing that flavor combination into the new Firework Freezer 5-Hour Energy Shot. blending sweet cherry, zesty lime, and electric blue raspberry into one refreshing shot inspired by those iconic summer freeze pop. That flavor instantly takes me back to the lake. I will never forget going to the lake and going to a marina, walking inside, grabbing one of those freezer pops and walking back out and going and feeding the fish as I'm eating one of those freezer pops. It is a memory that always comes back to me when I taste that flavor. Most energy drinks kind of blur together after a while, but this one stands out because it actually feels like fun and familiar. That the cherry, the lime, and blue raspberry combo really tastes like summer. Ignite your taste buds with the flavor of summer. Get a firework freeze 5-hour energy shot today. For more information, visit 5hourenergy.com. Battles to watch. There's a ton of them. There are a ton of guys that are trying to make this roster. And again, we've talked about this multiple times. I said this on the squad show. I think that there's maybe only been, probably since training camp started, 4 to 5 positions that are, really up for grabs. I think that the team had a pretty good idea as to who is going to be where, and let's run through it. We've talked about this on the Chiefs overtime segments a little bit this week. So one of the biggest roster battles in this game is going to be the tight end 3, tight end 4, and it's going to be a question of, can Briningstool or Wiley force themselves onto this roster in this game? And the problem is you would think it would be just between those two. It's not, because you're looking at a scenario where Kansas City is going to be having 3 quarterbacks on this roster, which is something they have never really done. So you're going to have 3 QBs in a season, and you're going to have 9 offensive linemen, would be my guess. So that puts you at 12 total. Then you add in 4 running backs, which I don't think there's any question there. That gets you to 16. You add in 6 wide receivers. That gets you to 22. And we will talk about wide receiver here in a little bit. But the reality is generally speaking, Kansas City likes to be 25 and 25. So you're going to have 25 on offense, 25 on defense. Will that end up being the case this year? I don't know. But again, back to what I said before, the reality is you're looking at Jared Wiley and you're looking at Jake Briningstool, and it's a question of, will both of them be on the roster, or is one on the roster? My guess is the default and the tie goes to Jared Wiley since he was a draft pick. Not sure that that's probably the right decision based on what we've seen, but it's not going to surprise me if he's the guy that makes this roster just because somebody that they drafted. Generally speaking, those guys are going to be given the best opportunities to make the roster. So then you look at it and it comes down to, if you keep 4 tight ends, do you go short a wide receiver? I would make an argument easily that there's probably only 6 wide receivers that deserve to be on this roster, and one of them is not Nico Remigio. I think Andrew Armstrong has done enough to show that he will likely get picked up off the waiver wire if he is cut. And I think he needs to be on. I think he deserves a chance on this roster. The problem is, it's not just really, can he make the team? Because he's not going to be anything more than the 6th best wide receiver. You've easily got Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Tyquan Thornton as your top 3. Cyrus Allen and Jalen Royals are your next 2. And both of those guys are going to be on this roster as well. Then it becomes a question of, is Nico Remigio enough at the returner position that you give him that job and keep him on the team for that opportunity, and you cut a guy that actually could produce at wide receiver in Andrew Armstrong? There's multiple different arguments here. There's multiple different directions you could go with this. Part of the problem and part of the roster math also becomes, how many are you going to be able to have active on game day? Because one of the things that Andrew Armstrong does really well is run blocking. And so you could see a scenario where you'd want him out there for run blocking, but can he play special teams for you? Can he give you those special team snaps? Can he step in and do that? Because if he can't really be active. And if he's active, you're probably not going to be able to have Jalen Royals active. So you're going to have one of those wide receivers sitting down more than likely. And again, going back to the tight ends, I don't think you can have 4 tight ends active on game day. So you're likely going to have a tight end and a wide receiver down, would be my guess, just for game day actives. Offensive line, I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't really think that there's anybody that's necessarily a big question mark. Caliendo, I guess, could make the roster, especially if they keep 10. I just don't see a reason to keep him this year. We'll see if that ends up being the case or if they go a different direction. If you flip it over to the other side of the ball, this is where it also gets really interesting. And you were looking at a scenario where you probably are keeping 9 defensive linemen. Maybe you only keep 8. But if you do the quick math, let's just look at it this way. If you keep 10 DBs and you keep 8 offensive linemen, that gets you to 18. So I would think you probably keep 9. And at that point, you'd be at 19 between the DBs and the defensive line. Then you could keep, you could technically keep up to 6 linebackers. I don't think Kansas City has 6 linebackers they want to keep. So it's not going to shock me if what you see is a scenario where you have your top 4 defensive tackles, which isn't going to include Norman Lott. He's going to likely start the season on the PUP list. That seems to be pretty clear as it sits right now. So I do think Marcus Harris makes this roster. So then it becomes a question of if you keep 5 defensive ends, which you could, I would imagine Emmanuel Ogbah is going to be on that list. And okay, so you say you keep Emmanuel Ogbah and he is on your roster. What does that mean for, do you keep an extra defensive end? Do you keep, a guy like Tyreek Smith who isn't going to play in this game because he's hurt? Or do you let them go and keep an extra DB because you have a gluttony of corners that you have to figure out? I'm not sure which ones they go with at this point. There are a lot of different questions when it comes to the defensive end group. I also think that one of the things to think about when it comes to this defensive end group is that it could be a situation where you're looking at a defensive end that's not even on this roster being a guy that not necessarily starts for Kansas City, but gets a lot of snaps for Kansas City, especially if they are able to get a hold of Mike Dana if he gets cut from the Bills. So I could see a scenario where he's back this year for this team to kind of give them a little bit more in the run defense department, not necessarily for pass rush. I think they have that covered. When we get back, who's going to be making the team? Who's going to be pressing? We're going to talk a lot about the DBs and some of the linebackers and some of the special teams guys. That's coming up right after this.
Matt Derry here from the Locked On Lions podcast. Life insurance is one of those things you don't really think about until you have a reason to. For me, it really hit home when my father passed away over 20 years ago. You start thinking less about yourself and more about the people who depend on you, and making sure they're taken care of no matter what. That's why I like Ethos. They make getting life insurance simple. It's 100% online, no doctor visits, no needles, none of that. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in just a few minutes, and even get same-day coverage. And honestly, that's huge because life gets busy. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some plans are as low as just $30 a month. It's just one of those things that gives you peace of mind knowing your family is protected. Take 10 minutes to get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Applications may vary. Rates may vary.
Making the team. Again, starting last segment, kind of talked about some battles. Haven't got to the corner position, and this is where it gets really interesting. You look at this team, and I think that there's a legitimate possibility they keep 6 corners and 5 safeties. And the reason I say that is because you look at the roster math, and it changes a little bit if you end up going with 4 tight ends on offense, and maybe you have to go only 24 on defense, then maybe you don't do that. I don't see that they have 6 linebackers that they want to keep on this roster. 5, sure, but even that's a stretch because you have Jack Cochran, who's not going to be playing in this game. Is he going to be a guy that they're going to be able to keep on the roster, or is he out because he does have a knee injury and we haven't seen any indication as to how long that injury could last? So you have questions at the linebacker position behind your starters. You have Drew Tranquil and you have Nick Bolton. We know those two. McDonald is going to be on this roster. Not a question. Jeffrey Bossa is going to be on this roster. Not a question. Who's 5? Is it Cam Jones? Is it somebody that's not even on this roster? I just don't see somebody that is really giving them enough to show that they need to make this roster. So this is a position that somebody should be able to go in there and maybe take a position on this Chiefs 53-man roster. Cole Christensen, they've had him long enough. I don't think that he adds anything to this team. Could he be the 5th guy? Yeah, he could. Is it somebody that they really are going to want on a daily basis or on a game day basis? No. And again, I'm not sure that all 5 linebackers will dress, so that's something to consider when you look at that as well. Then you look at this from the perspective of the DBs. Okay, so at this point, Alohi Gilman and Shamari Connor are going to be your starters. Don't think there's any question there. Jaden Hicks is going to be on this roster. Can't see that changing. Xavier Wampa, I think, has made this roster as it sits right now, although that's one of the question marks when it comes to the DBs. But Christian Roland-Wallace is already going to be on this roster as well. He's considered a safety. He practices with the safeties, but his position that he starts at is nickel corner. So to me, I'm throwing him out there with the safety group. So that's 5. That's 5 safeties I think are on this roster. Now, when you go and you look at a scenario of your corners, Mansour Delane's on this roster. Noah Williams is on this roster. Jaden Kennedy's on this roster. We know those 3 are going to be there. Based on what Steve Spagnuolo has said, it seems L'Jarius Sneed is going to be on this roster. Even though he hasn't played, he hasn't really practiced much, it sounds like they expect that he is going to be on this roster. So at that point, he becomes corner number 4 for you. 3 really behind Mansour Delane and Noah Williams, but corner 4 because he's going to not be playing the nickel. That'll be Christian Roland-Wallace. So how does the rest of it shake out? Corner number 4, the actual corner number 4 is probably Jaden Kennedy. Or maybe it's Kristian Fulton. But when you look at the cost of Kristian Fulton, they have to make moves on this roster to free up cap space. He has a $10 million cap hit that they could get rid of if they trade him. If they cut him, they save 5. You could have $5 to $10 million for Kristian Fulton to not play on this team in 2026. That's something I think the Kansas City Chiefs are probably going to be having to look through and figure out. What do the Chiefs do? Do they keep Kristian Fulton and L'Jarius Sneed on this roster? Is that something that they're going to look at this season? And at that point, yeah, you can do it. But the problem that you're going to run into is I don't see how there's any possible way you have both of those guys active on game day because the roster math just doesn't make it work. You need guys on special teams, and neither of those guys are going to be special teamers for you. Kennedy will be, so he will be out there. Then it becomes a question of, is it Melvin Smith? Is it Kevin Knowles? Do either of those guys make the roster? Kader Kohu is, I think, on the outside looking in at this point, but he is another name that I at least should mention. But again, he is a nickel corner. And at this point, probably at best, your 4th nickel corner? Maybe. Because when you look at it, it's Christian Roland-Wallace's nickel corner number 1. I don't know where you would put Jaden Kennedy when you start talking just straight nickel corner. Do they think he's nickel corner 2 or do they think he's nickel corner 3? And I say that because L'Jarius Sneed is going to be in that conversation as well. So if you're keeping 3 guys that can play nickel corner already, I don't see how Kader Kohu is going to be on this roster. He hasn't looked great this offseason or this preseason, and he's also a veteran that isn't going to be a core special teams guy. So I do think that that's a big question going into this. I don't think he has a chance to make this roster at this point. I thought that maybe he would be the nickel guy, but it looks like they want to go with Christian Roland-Wallace, so I don't think that Kohu is going to be a guy that can really challenge at this point. So then it becomes a question of Melvin Smith and Kevin Knowles. We know what Kevin Knowles brings when it comes to special teams. Doesn't necessarily quite have the ability to play at the corner position like you would like. But again, when you start looking at the roster numbers and you start looking at who's going to be active on game day, Kevin Knowles is likely to be a guy that could be active on game day because he could be playing as a gunner. He could be playing as, a blocker out on the outside on punts. He could be lots of different things for you in the special teams game, which is something that you're going to have to consider, especially if you have L'Jarius Sneed and Kristian Fulton on this roster, because neither of those guys are going to give you special teams reps. I have a really hard time believing there's a scenario where you can have Mansour Delane, Noah Williams, L'Jarius Sneed, Jaden Kennedy, and Kristian Fulton active at the same time. I just don't see a scenario where you can have all 5 of those active on game day. Yes, that gives you one guy at that corner position that you feel can be a core special teams guy at Kennedy. You're not going to get the core special teams snaps from the wide receiving group or the running back group to fill in those situations and be gunners and whatnot, and covered punts and covered kicks. I just don't see that. So you're going to have two guys that can play special teams in the corner room, and that's not Kristian Fulton or L'Jarius Sneed. So if you're going to keep both of them, one of them is going to be inactive pretty much every single week, would be my guess, unless you have a injury to a starter. So it's possible they go that direction. It's possible they keep 6 corners, and you are in a scenario where you have that many guys, or you're in a scenario where you have, Sneed and Kristian Fulton either active or not active every single week, unless there's a starter injured, and then maybe you can have them both active. The corner's just hard. They have a lot of guys. They have guys that can play defense, but they don't have the guys that can step in and probably be the core special teamers and play defense. Because I don't think that you feel great about Melvin Smith. I don't think you feel great about Kevin Knowles. And I don't think either of those guys really makes you feel great about making Kristian Fulton expendable. But I could see a scenario more likely that he becomes expendable because the roster match just means that it has to happen, and Kansas City needs the cap space. All of that being said, these guys are going to get a ton of snaps on Friday night. Let me know in the comments who you were excited to see in this game against the Seattle Seahawks. I cannot wait, because preseason game number 3 is going to shine a light on who is going to make this roster. Roster moves are going to start happening shortly after this game on Friday as well. Let me know, like I said, let me know in the comments who you think is going to be having a big game, who could make the roster in your mind. Please like and subscribe to this channel, and do not forget, we will have a live post-game show immediately following the game against the Seattle Seahawks. Thank you all for listening today, and we will talk to you later.